Hello again. Welcome to another workshop on online teaching and course design best practices. I'm Laura. I believe I know all of you, but I'm an instructional designer with Citi and will be your facilitator for the next half hour. So this workshop specifically covers best practice 1.8, which pertains to learning objectives that align. So I will be recording this workshop, and I do have a presentation, but please feel free to use the chat, unmute yourself and ask questions should you have them. Don't worry about interrupting me if you need clarification or would like to offer your input on anything we're talking about, because this session really is for you and to facilitate and support you in your teaching efforts. Okay, so let's take a closer look at this best practice. Here's a screenshot of this annotation, of the annotated best practices that was sent out about a month ago or so, I think, in a Citi newsletter. And I'll link it also again later on in the session. But this particular best practice recommendation is the 8th in the first of 7 best practice categories. And I'm going to jump ahead to those categories just to remind you of what they are, because we will have workshops on all of them, not on every single best practice recommendation, because there are lots, but on the ones that really we want to emphasize and the ones I think that are meaningful to you. So today we're going to be focusing on a best practice recommendation. Just to sort of back up a little bit, since you guys couldn't see my slides, here is a screenshot of the best practice recommendations, or the best annotated best practices, which I was mentioning earlier, with a little, you can see what's highlighted in yellow is the recommendation we're going to talk about today. And this includes both the description of the best practice, links to guides and additional resources, some of which Citi's developed, some we have sourced externally. But we're going to take a closer look. This is just sort of a glimpse of what that best practice is. And again, it falls within course structure, which refers to the overall design and function of your course. So course navigability, consistency, clarity, among all aspects of your course design. So it really is sort of the foundation, obviously the structure upon which your course is built. And again, we're looking at course structure, the first of 7 best practice categories, which we will move through as we have these brief workshops on them. Okay, so here's 1.8. I want to look at it a little bit more closely because it is, there's a lot. It's a mouthful, right? I'm going to read through some, not all of it. And as you can see, I've put in bold words that I think are worth highlighting and emphasizing in the best practice itself and in the annotation. So best practice 1.8 reads, every module has measurable or observable learning objectives that are clearly stated and aligned with the course level objectives or outcomes. And the annotation reads, alignment is the foundation of any course. It's the skeleton around which your course could not stand. Therefore, measurable and observable learning objectives support that alignment and should clearly describe what learners should be able to do or show upon mastery of that skill. Well-written objectives are specific and can be measured by the instructor through the completion of an activity or assessment in a course. So the rest of the annotation goes on to talk about how the importance of, developing and aligning your course level objectives and your module or weekly objectives, aligning these before you begin to, source or develop materials, activities, and assessments that reinforce those objectives. So we're going to be talking more about that, what that means, what that looks like, and how to evaluate it and revise it in your course. So this is a huge topic, right? As all designers who are here and all of you know, we could spend a whole workshop series on writing quality learning objectives and then another on alignment, but we have only 30 minutes and now like 21. So these are going to be like high level need to know key concepts in this workshop. So I would say for this best practice recommendation, you're primarily concerning yourself with 2 key concepts. One providing measurable and observable module learning objectives, and to verifying that your course and module objectives are aligned. And alignment also extends to learning materials, activities, and assessments, but that will be addressed likely in a different workshop because it pertains to a different best practice recommendation. Here, we're really just looking at alignment with your objectives and clear statement, or clearly communicating those objectives and that alignment in your course. All right, so let's look at the first thing. Again, it's a big topic. There's a lot to talk about, right? And we could spend a lot of time on it, though we don't have that time today. But the first thing we're looking at is providing measurable or observable module learning objectives, right? Just to throw it back on you guys, what would you say, what does that mean? What is a measurable or observable learning objective? Anyone want to try to define that?
I think measurable, this is Lori Gillard.
Lori?
I think measurable and observable are kind of different things, because observable is almost like to me, that's a psychomotor kind of thing, because you can observe it. Yep. Versus measurable, I can have somebody, participate in a case study, they turn stuff up, they do the work, they turn it in, I can look and I can see and measure whether or not they understand what they're supposed to be doing. So yeah, I think the trick here, though, as an online instructor, observable. So I'm just curious what you have to say about that, because I have my own thoughts.
Yeah, okay, great. And please feel free to introduce those thoughts. And I think you're right. They're not either or necessarily. They're and, yes, and, right? So two different things. Observable, like you said, Lori, is, I can observe the student performing that action as a demonstration of their knowledge. Therefore, I can assess it, right? Measurable is something a bit different, right? It can be measured. It's a specific unit, essentially, that can be defined. So let's take a look at a couple of objectives, right? Are these objectives measurable? Understand how to perform CPR. Be aware of the correct techniques for performing chest compressions. Are these objectives measurable in your opinion?
Not really.
But why or why not? Yeah, go ahead.
I don't think that they are measurable, because we have no way. Well, we can, I suppose, give an examination and see if someone understands how to perform CPR, or we can ask them to do it. But if that's the case, then the objective ought to better be stated: accurately perform CPR, rather than understand it, because really reaching into their head, there's no way to really measure or observe if they understand it, other than to just have them do it. And so state the objective more clearly. Same with be aware of the correct techniques. They might demonstrate the correct techniques. That is observable, but whether or not they're aware is kind of too nebulous. And it's difficult for students to understand. What do they mean by that as well?
Yeah, nebulous is a great way of putting it, right? Like, as you say, they may understand it, but how do I know they understand it? It's very challenging to observe that without using like a very specific action verb to try to describe that activity so that it can be assessed, right? So instead of, like you say, Catherine, these not, very well-written learning objectives, we can instead substitute very specific verbs in their place, and instead trying verbs like identify the key steps and components of effective CPR, demonstrate the correct technique for performing chest compressions, or as you say, perform chest compressions, right? So students could identify those key steps in an assessment, such as a quiz or an exam, maybe through multiple choice or through mix and match, or what have you. They could demonstrate or perform chest compressions in a simulation or in a scenario-based learning experience in an online course. These can be more easily assessed or measured by you, the instructor, right? As opposed to you trying to assess whether or not they understand something, right? That is really more of a sort of a cognitive domain that, is not something that is necessarily, is not useful when constructing a well-written learning objective. So there are different approaches, and especially with the advent of AI, there are so many ways, and again, we don't have time to really talk about it, but ways that you can approach writing learning objectives. But I wanted to introduce you just to a couple for the sake of time, both the SMART model and the ABCD method. And I like these because they're sort of friendly mnemonic devices that you can use to sort of remind yourself, okay, do I have all the key things that I want, that I need to have in my objective for it to be a well-written or clearly written, measurable and observable learning objective? And SMART stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely. And these are pretty self-explanatory. But in terms of specific, is it clear? Is it direct, like identifying the steps? Is it measurable? Can it be observed and assessed? Is it attainable? Can a student reasonably accomplish this task during the given time frame, right? Which is why module or weekly learning objectives sort of break down knowledge into more smaller sort of discrete steps so that they are and build toward larger, more higher level learning objectives. Is it relevant? And this is where alignment comes in. Is the objective connected to the course in an integral and necessary way, right? And we'll talk more about it when we discuss alignment in a moment. And timely, does it make sense sequentially? This could pertain to scaffolding, the idea of building up knowledge in order to arrive at a culminating course learning of objective, and assessing whether or not an objective fits within the natural progression of their learning in the course. So I think this is a good kind of friendly reminder to think about when assessing the clarity of your learning objectives. You could also think about the ABCD method, which is something that Peg referenced when she wrote the learning objectives page in T3, our instructor resource course in Canvas. It's a good way of just sort of learning how to construct, not necessarily evaluate, but construct a well-written learning objective. You would first begin by defining your audience, who's going to be doing it, your behavior. What should the learner be able to do? The conditions under which they're going to be able to do it, the degree. And then what I like about this example from Rebecca Hogue is it shows you an example of that. So we have the audience, instructional design students will be able to write learning objectives. That's the behavior. It's at the bottom here of the slide. With the aid of this document, the conditions and the degree 100% of the time. So you see that all those components are there. They don't have to be to have a well-written learning objective, in my opinion. You don't need to say that your student is going to perform correct CPR 100% of the time. One would hope that they would be able to do that when they complete the module or lesson. But it's not necessary, I think, for the purpose of the learning objective. So you may not have all of these components to still have a well-written learning objective. So I thought we could give it a try just to make, again, this a bit more interactive. I wanted to spend just a minute or two on this. Peg also linked to these wonderful learning objective generators. So if you're struggling with how to write a well learning objective, you have these handy websites that can help you do that. So I'm going to share my screen once again. And go to, can you all see the learning objectives easy generator here?
Not yet.
Yep.
We can see your slide, but we can't see the website. Now we can.
Okay, great. I apologize. I'm still having these issues where when I share my screen, sometimes my Zoom crashes and they can't seem to figure out why that is, but it's a persistent problem. So I apologize for that. So this wonderful easy generator, again, which I mentioned Peg had put in her learning objectives page in T3. I'm just going to drop it in the chat here. for those of you that want to follow along or do it, but I thought we could do it together to using the ABCD method, right? As you can see, it satisfies each of those components. So why doesn't someone throw out a learner that they, or their imagined audience? If we're, let's try to construct this learning objective together. Imagine a course that you teach and maybe a unit that you'd like to develop or revise a learning objective in. Who is the learner in this case?
I just put in a blood bank student.
You just put in one
blood bank, because that's just what I got, blood banking students. But I'm kind of doing it along with you, which is kind of fun.
Okay, so you said blood bank students, okay,
yeah. Or student, whatever. I don't know.
Students, okay, student, okay. Let's try that. Let's go to next. So now we can choose the level of knowledge according to these different cognitive domains, which are based on Bloom's taxonomy, which we won't have time to go into in detail, but which one of these would you like to?
Why don't we?
What's the level of the student? Are these first-year students or
no, they're graduate? They're post-baccalaureate, so they've already got bachelor's degree. So this is kind of a graduate level.
Okay.
So I think I would like them to let's go under, let's see what, let's click on the other ones besides remember, because I think this is really cool for everyone to see how it just, so let's use applying, and I would say interpret.
Okay, great. Interpret. All right. So we're going to apply and interpret. We'll go to next. So and
then let's say antibody reactivity.
Reactivity, you said?
In testing. I'm going to say in testing.
Okay.
I'm just thinking. I'm just curious. I'm wondering. Oh,
okay. So they'll be able to interpret. Great. And then the condition.
How about in test tubes? I don't know. What do they want for a condition? So gel testing. Describe the conditions of performing the test.
Yeah.
At 37 degrees. Let's say that.
Okay.
Just for the heck of it.
You said 37
everybody.
degrees?
I'm kind of hogging it from you.
Oh, that's okay. This is great. Is that what you said? 37 degrees?
At 37 degrees. Okay.
All right. So
is that all that there is to it, though? I thought
that's all for this learning objective. It's a good place to start. It may not be what you're after, but at least it sort of walks you through the steps. We have a blood bank student. You might qualify that by saying a first year, second year, whatever. Yeah. And again, this might not be something you're going to put in your course because that's audience is implied. But you may say they'll be able to interpret antibody reactivity in testing at 37 degrees.
Yeah.
Interpret is a very specific and measurable verb because you can assess it in a variety of ways, right? And then you have the conditions in which they're going to be interpreting. So this may be a kind of smaller, discrete learning objective that you use to reinforce a larger course learning objective, right? Thanks, Lori. Yeah. That's great.
Okay, I'll mute myself and let other people talk.
Yeah, no, any questions or comments about that before we move on? Okay, so it's just one approach, and I just wanted to introduce you guys to just a kind of nifty tool that can support you. But most importantly, right, we're going to be really focusing on creating observable, measurable learning objectives. And the second thing you'll want to think about is verifying that all your course and module learning objectives are aligned. So because, we're in health sciences here, I referenced the skeleton earlier. Here's my skeleton. It's not perfectly organized, but still it gives the idea of alignment really being integral to your course design and your overall course structure, right? And really informing everything you do to provide your students with a meaningful learning experience. I'm hoping you guys can see the skeleton that I have here. Please let me know if not.
So we can, Laura, and I just have to say what a wonderful way that is to in picture format, describe the alignment of those 4 things. That's really, I love it.
Oh, thanks, Catherine. I mean, I think alignment, and I'm thinking of it in this context, and I think, oh, a spine, right? Right. I think of things just being just so in alignment, right? I'm a visual thinker, so I try to put things into visual form when I'm imagining them or trying to remember them. But again, alignment is going to inform everything you do in the course, from your learning materials, such as the lectures and readings that you assign to, your activities, such as group projects or worksheets, to your assessments, like quizzes and exams. A well-aligned course should fit together, right? And should operate fluidly, where each part really reinforces and supports the other. It's a big, and it can be a big kind of overwhelming task to try to determine alignment, right? So if we look at it in more practical terms, how do you determine alignment? And a great way, and I think a way that all of us instructional designers like to approach it, because it's wonderfully systematic and it gives you a great picture of a course and how to create and determine alignment in it, is an alignment map. So say you're at the course design stage, maybe you're inherited a course that already has course level objectives given to you, which is quite common. Or maybe you already teach a developed course. How do you proceed to create or evaluate your alignment? An alignment table is a great way to start, or a map can be a great way to start, because it's as simple as a table where essentially you lay out all of your modules, your weeks or your units, however you organize your content, and determine if and how your module objectives, your learning materials, activities, and assessments fit together to reinforce your module and your course level objectives. So I've provided for you an example of that, again, based upon that sort of the CPR example I used earlier, where we have the course level objective in the first column. Again, this is a hypothetical course, but imagine that this is a course level objective, with the corresponding module objectives next to it. And I'm not sure, because I'm not a subject matter expert in your field, but imagine these module objectives are, taught in any one module or unit, or multiple modules, because it seems like a big task to do all of these things. But more importantly, notice how these module objectives describe smaller and discrete actions that reinforce the course learning objectives. So in order to be able to apply proper CPR techniques, you need to know how to demonstrate the correct technique for performing chest compressions, right? These are building blocks or steps toward being able to achieve the ultimate course learning objective. So you can imagine how this might pertain to your course, right? And to the content that you teach, being able to break down these big learning goals into smaller, more discrete steps, right, that are attainable during that specific time frame and that are timely, right? Because again, they build upon each other. And then you can thereby just find your learning materials, your activities, and your assessments that would reinforce and give the students the correct both knowledge and practice to be able to accomplish these objectives. And I just realized, oh Lordy, it's 1:28. So I'm not going to talk about this, but just another way of visualizing alignment. Lastly, I'll say the importance of clearly communicating that to your students is really a key part also of this best practice recommendation. It's not enough just to have them, but it's important to be transparent. And so students know why what they're doing is meaningful and why they're doing it, that it's directed toward a learning goal, not only for that week or that unit, but also ultimately in the course itself. So you could do that by putting your objectives in a overview, such as this, which we see from our online teaching and course design class, or in your syllabus or elsewhere in your course. You can even share your alignment table with your students, and I've seen lots of faculty do that, so that students can also see your logic behind how you've designed and structured your course. So we have like a minute or two, but just, you might, when troubleshooting, trying to assess, I would say, most importantly, if you're struggling to do this, writing good learning objectives isn't easy. It can be quite hard and very challenging. Something that may look very simple at first glance can be difficult to write clearly and succinctly so that it specifically refers to a learning goal. So please reach out to City. The IDs are, trained to do this. We love doing it. And we can help walk you through the steps or evaluate or assess, your course for alignment. And it's a great sort of first step when you're looking back and you're sort of initiating a course review to determine how well designed your course is, and then to move on from there if you need to make tweaks or anything. So it is 1:30 already. This has gone by so quickly. I have a bunch of resources here, but if anyone wants to stick around for a minute or two, do you have any questions or suggestions or that you'd like to add? Has anyone ever tried to evaluate your course for alignment? And, maybe what kind of obstacles did you encounter, or any recommendations that you have for your peers?
Well, if anybody was around when we went from Blackboard to Canvas. No, actually wasn't that. It was when we went from semesters to quarters. I know that in the College of Health Sciences, we all had to reevaluate our courses because we had to modify them from 10 weeks to 15 weeks. And we had to go through and look at all of this stuff. And we had a chart similar to what you showed, but it doesn't hurt to go back and take another look, because time goes on, and just it's nice just to continuously try to improve on the courses, which we all do. So
yeah, and it's a great point, Laura. You might find that, this is a really fun little nifty video I want the students to see. But an alignment map is a great way to determine, oh goodness, maybe even though it's nifty, it may be extraneous to what I'm trying to teach them, and it may cognitively overwhelm them, right? Is it integrally connected to and related to the learning goals that I want to accomplish here?
Yeah.
So like you say, it's a good way to go back and see, maybe continuously reassess to determine, if I'm giving the students what they need to accomplish what I would like them to accomplish, right? Am I giving them enough? Am I not giving them too much? Is it all correctly aligned, right? It's not easy to do, right?
And that website, I think for people who are kind of like struggling to think, oh God, my brain, I can't think of a good objective for this particular level hierarchy, of learning. I think that's nice because it gives you all those verbs, because it is important to get the right verb, and also to measure like what kind of ability. So it's not just recall, you're going to take it to a higher level. So I think this is very useful.
Oh, I'm so glad you mentioned that too. So in looking at this alignment map again, what I did neglected to mention was that apply, right, is a more sophisticated, higher order cognitive domain, right? It implies that you're going to have accomplished these sort of lower order tasks, like identifying, in order to be able to achieve this more complicated goal of applying, right? So yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, right? It's important to determine and assess what level students need to be at, and to write your objectives accordingly.
So here's something for all of you instructional designers. I know Peg's on here, and I, as an asynchronous instructor, like just getting the right objectives, because I had an assessment in the fall, and I was told, like, they found that they wanted us, well, I kind of had some discussion about psychomotor and demonstrating certain behaviors when you're asynchronous. So anyway, what I ended up doing, and I feel like actually I think it's a good thing, but I ended up using Studio and having the students, instead of filling out a case study, what I had them do was record themselves. And what I did was had them interview me. So the case study actually said, how would you, interview a new new hire and how would you train them and describe it? But they actually had to talk to me in a video, which was really interesting. And sorry, I don't know what the deal is with my, oh, there, now I fixed it. That little
Happens to me
lever
too.
went over my thingamajig. No, but this is something that's important to me because I'm trying to figure out ways. So one of my instructors is, because we were looking for these verbs. So here you have, and this is very cool, Peg, that you can add additional verbs, which I think is really nice. I mean, I'm going to play with this a bit, this website, but just to enhance the learning experience for the remote learners, it kind of challenged me. And that's why we do these mock interviews, or I do require that they do presentations live, but I just wonder, what else we can do. Go ahead, Peg. I see your little hand going up. You're muted.
I want to defer to Laura first if she has any thoughts before I jump in.
Oh, no, please jump in, Peg. Go right ahead.
So one of the things I recommend to people is, like you say, putting it in the hands of the students to do some of the legwork. Number one, it takes some of the pressure off of you guys. Number two, it makes it more tangible to them in their learning style. So I'll often send students on a scavenger hunt, or I'll have them do a presentation like you're talking about. I'll have them do, I'll have them build a project from ground, one stage each week so that they're scaffolding a project. And all of those things help to keep them engaged while they're attaining the learning objectives. And then the other thing that really helps keep them dialed in, and I think you already do this, I know a lot of people do, is I do a midterm check-in, and I look at the learning objectives and have we been staying true to what we're supposed to be doing, halfway through, so that I can adjust as I move forward in the end of the term.
I think that's a really good point, because I don't, I can see, I see what we've got, but I need to go back and look at the course learning objectives and where we're at with all that, and then make adjustments.
Well, and let them tell you. So I put up it's 3 questions. What's good? What's not good? What can I do differently? Or what can we do differently? And it gives the students an opportunity to get, if they're upset about anything or venting, and I let it be anonymous. There's no tracking. It's just anonymous. And it lets them get it out of their system. If they have something to vent, sometimes it's a little painful, but I'd rather have it before the final eval so that I can adjust. And then it also, most of the time, it's quite positive, and I'm able to just make slight adjustments or tweaks going forward.
Well, one thing we do, like in the blood bank program, every week, all the courses have and it's voluntary, but we call them the minute papers, and it's the 2 things: what you like, what didn't you like.
Yep.
And I tried to make it anonymous, but I can't resist giving them feedback and thanking them for their suggestions. And what I've done is built it into my Canvas, so it'll say do not publish.
Yeah.
And then there'll be minute paper responses. Because they don't need, nothing's that negative that they can't see it. But I save it for what I can adjust now, I'll do, but then I'll save it for next year. For the next time I offer that class, I read each one so I can go and tweak things to make sure that they're kind of. But I thought it was really, one thing I need to do is one of the feedback comments was pairing people up to put them through a mock assessment for accreditation for their blood bank. And I need to try to do that. The thing that's hard is I have people people are working full time and they're at different time zones. So I'm not quite sure how to do that. How would you do that? Do I assign them to figure out a time for them to meet up? Is that?
Well, what I do is I try to find things that are asynchronous, like Jamboards or Padlets, or things that they can use that are not tied to time. They don't have to actually talk together. They can just put their ideas up together and then they can determine a time or a place, it is challenging. That's the one most challenging thing.
Yeah. But they really liked doing that, the videoing of themselves. Yeah. One person had trouble, a couple people kind of had trouble. One guy who I've got who's in Africa, we ended up doing it live because he doesn't have reliable Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Which is fine. You know what? Just tell me what you want. You want to record yourself, or you got to do it in person, one or the other. And then one of them did I don't know how she did it. And I told her I won't use it. for an example for next year if she's okay with it, because she like broke it down and had these funny little voices introducing each section, but it was so clever, and it wasn't more than maybe 8 minutes total. Because I told people, you don't need to make this real long.
Yeah.
And I gave them like the criteria, a couple people. The first one was like 30 minutes. I'm like, oh my God, this is happening with all the students, even though I told them, keep it short and sweet. Don't go past like 15 minutes. But anyway, most people were able to stay within the, guardrails of that. But well, I think
You can see from this session, time flies.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And honestly, these little workshops are very helpful.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that.
Because
Awesome.
they always give me a couple, and even working yesterday, I did something with Emily, and I got it took me a morning to do this. I put quiz questions into a YouTube, but it felt so satisfying when I was all done. I kept watching it over and over to just make sure it was in the right place. But these things that you provide, see, that's a way for me to give them something to interact with too. So, I mean, you probably don't think anything of it because you guys do it all the time.
No,
like me not doing that all the time.
Isn't it fun when you discover a fun new way to make the learning exciting, right? It's just a joy, in my opinion.
It really is. And it's satisfying because then the students will tell me, like, for a long time, I did not record, but things after COVID have just gotten so much better technology wise that when I do people, Catherine Charlie goes, oh, I've been doing this forever. But I did not like to record myself. I hate hearing my voice, but I did it. And I had those minute papers. I had several people every week saying, thank you for that. It helped so much. And I'm like, I think I sound goofy, but whatever. They liked it. And now I did have one person say, I really don't listen to it. And see, that's where I can't resist the feedback. So I'm like, it's not, you don't have to. I'm just doing it because some people like it. So don't feel obligated. So I don't know.
Right. And that's the key. To me, that's the key, is giving students multiple avenues to the same information so that they don't have to take a certain path, but they have more autonomy to take the path that works best for them.
Yeah.
And I have people telling me that they like to listen to the recordings as they're driving into work, which I couldn't imagine listening to this stuff in the morning going to work. But you know what? They like it. And I'm happy because they're busy people and it gives them value to their time, because there's a lot of reading and there's a lot of work in these courses, so whatever helps them, successfully achieve their goals. I'm really happy about that. Anyway.
Thanks,
okay.
Lori.
I know.
Catherine, did you have something you wanted to say? Sorry to interrupt you, Lori. I didn't mean to.
Oh, no.
So what I was just going to say is that, as we moved over the last several years, particularly when we went into Canvas, there was a push to go to weekly modules that keeps them engaged, doing something new, something different each week, with smaller chunks of work to do throughout a term. And the nice thing about that is, especially if your modules scaffold, with regard to writing objectives, in the early, you've got 15 modules to spread across the time to meet maybe 5 or 6 course objectives. And so you can start with some of those lower order objectives early on in the term. And then as the students' skills and knowledge increases, you can move to the higher order objectives, so that by the end of the term, in the last few modules, they're really then coming into fully meeting the course objectives. So I think it's nice for students too, because they don't come right out of the chute and, with the expectation that they meet these very high order objectives. And so they can see the learning progress, and you can. And I've just found that it's helpful when I'm writing objectives. I have the hierarchy of verbs, and I really try to be intentional about using some of the lower order verbs, particularly in first year students early on. And then, you can it makes it easier to pick the verbs for each objective as you move through the term. So I was just going to say that's one of the nice things I think about having weekly modules with, 2 or 3 weekly objectives as well.
Yeah. That's a great point, Catherine. Janaea, did you have a comment or a question?
she just.
Hello, sorry, I was trying to unmute myself. I'm muted in
okay.
two places. No, I was just wondering if you could share the other table or the other figure or image that you had for the alignment.
Yeah, for sure. We will send out, oh, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to see it. That's all.
Oh, sure.
That came after the table that you had. It was like a little building.
Oh, yeah, that's from Quality Matters. Yeah, that is another just great way to visualize alignment. Here, I can just share it really quickly if you'd like to see it.
Hey, Matters, do they do that with Canvas too? Because I remember that was a big Blackboard thing, wasn't it? Or I don't know if it was specific to Blackboard.
Got it. Okay, cool. Thank you. I just wanted to see what it looks like.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm having technical issues once again. Can you guys hear me? Here's my screen.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. It keeps telling me that Zoom is crashing. So I can't trust whether or not it's actually crashing. Okay, yeah. So this is the Quality Matter sort of illustration, Quality Matters illustration of alignment, which is commonly referenced when talking about alignment, objective, and everything in your course, right? And I like it because the objectives are the literal foundation upon which everything else is built, capped off by the assessments, right? Which is how you evaluate whether or not your students know what you want them to know.
Yep.
So
and it's all those 3 pillars that help get them there to the point where they're ready for the assessments. That's another great.
Yeah, exactly. Like literally raises them up, right?
It really does.
Yeah. Again, I just love these little sort of visual representations. They really help me. So, but Janaea, we'll send out the slides and we'll send out the recording. And within that are a bunch of links to all these resources that I've referenced, right? Because I didn't create this. I want to make sure inside Quality Matters who did. So you'll have that all at your fingertips momentarily in the next day or two.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Oh, you're welcome.
This was great.
Oh, yeah. Great.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And I have to say, it's kind of nice having 30-minute ones. They're kind of like a quick little review, and then everybody
it is, but I found the prospect just so daunting of addressing a subject like this in 30 minutes, as you can see. It didn't work so well. But thank you all for attending. I really appreciate it. You guys have any other questions or for me, or any other IDs are here? Peg and Bronca. And I'm sorry, Emily and Bronca are also here.